afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Rebel News live stream on this, a Friday the 13th, 2022. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you a little about my co-host, folks. Do you know today is National Blame Someone Else Day? It doesn't apply to her. She's blameless. She's like Mrs. Kurt Hennig, Mrs. Perfect. She is the she-devil with the sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. She is Sheila Gunn Reid. How you doing, Sheila, on this Friday the 13th and Blame Someone Else Day?
You know, I'm just leaning in to the catastrophe that today is going to be. And I'm not a suspicious person. I'm not. But already it has been like, let's have a meeting about that. That probably could be an email. Let's talk about this. Probably could be an email. I'm just teasing in case the operations manager is watching. But I don't know. I'm just leaning into whatever catastrophe today would be. And I found my Camp Crystal Lake shirt. And for those of you who were wondering if I ever did find one for David Menzies, I did. I had to order it. And then I left it with the team in Quebec when we were all together for Christmas. And I don't know what happened to it then because I had to leave to catch a flight. And so I'm going to have to find him another one because we should have matching
with those
shirts.
Jabronis? Of course I don't have my sweatshirt, unlike the Red Sonja #1 comic book I gave to you last Saturday. But I guess that's the life I live. But I got to say, Sheila,
I'm
you
blaming
look
somebody else. It's the day.
What's that?
I'm blaming somebody else, as the day requires me to do.
Well, there's somebody in Quebec wearing a sweatshirt identical to that, obviously. And I love that sweatshirt. I don't know if you can stand up to let the folks see the illustration of Mr. Voorhees in a canoe. Enjoy nature.
Enjoy nature. And then it's got all the like badges that you can get on the side. Like target practice, so it's putting an arrow through someone's head, axe throwing, arts and crafts is making your mask, like your killer mask, and then carving, once again, somebody's been stabbed, and first aid, which is, I think, attacking somebody in a wheelchair. I'm not sure there.
Unbelievable. I absolutely adore it. Tell me, Sheila, and this could be a question to our audience, are you superstitious? Like, for example, do you get like antsy if you see a black cat crossing your path? If you're walking down a sidewalk downtown and there's a ladder and it's in your trajectory, will you go out of your way? I mean, where is your level of superstition?
I'm not superstitious at all. Like not even a little bit. I like spooky things, but I'm not superstitious. I sort of have a Christian worldview that you know, like you're not really supposed to go seeking truth in other ways, and you're not supposed to like worry about tarot cards or anything like that. So I'm not a superstitious person that way. When the black cat crosses my path, that's Margaret Scratcher, the world's best cat, which, by the way, brought me a woodpecker this morning. Dead woodpecker. I was like, good job, kitty. We live in a log house, and so I'm plagued by woodpeckers that keep me up at night. And I woke up this morning to the cat trying to bring in a dead woodpecker, and I was not upset, not even a little bit. I was so excited.
Well, I'm superstitious when it comes to sports. And earlier today, Sheila, Lincoln and I had a $30 bet on the Leaf Tampa Bay series. I'm a diehard Leafs fan, but I don't bet with my heart anymore. I bet with my brain. And I had $30 on Tampa. I offered Lincoln an early buyout. Instead, he offered to up the bet to $50 because we know that's money in the bank. The last time the Leafs won a series was 2004. Who was the prime minister in 2004? Sheila, so long ago. You know,
Paul Martin?
Pardon me?
Was it Paul Martin?
It might have been, yeah, because it was Harper was 2006, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how far back it goes, you know. And I'm not even speaking of the last time the Leafs won the Cup, which, of course, that would have been Lester Pearson in 1967. But when it comes to sports betting, I've learned the hard way not to bet with your heart. And poor Lincoln, he's going to learn come Monday morning that everybody's got a price for the $1 million menzoid, to quote the line of Mr. DiBiase. Oh, I'm looking forward to that. In any event, what is it we're trying to do here today, Sheila?
I don't know. But I'm actually glad that you compared me to Mr. Perfect, because I wish I understood how to deal with my curly hair the way Mr. Perfect dealt with his. His hair was always great.
Your hair, I think, is perfect today, Sheila. Normally, you've got that wild yet controlled look. I'm going back to my days as a hairstylist, which never happened. But today, it's looking sharp. What do you think, folks?
No, it's still wet. That's why it's sort of laying down still. Anyways, yeah, we should tell everybody what we're doing. This is not, hair care with David and Sheila. So this is the Rebel News Daily live stream. It's normally not hosted at all by David or me on Friday, but we're happy to jump in on the live stream because we know we have a carefully curated audience that expects us to do our job. So we're here filling in for the other hosts, and we used to just stream on YouTube. We still stream on YouTube, but YouTube is pretty censorious. So we've sort of spread out our content around the other parts of the internet where they don't really care about your politics. So we are currently streaming on Getter. We're also on Rumble, Odyssey, and Super U. And we love Rumble, Odyssey, and Super U because they don't care about our politics. We don't care about theirs. They also give you the opportunity to support the work that we do completely willingly. So if you leave something called a Rumble rant, that's their paid chat. We'll do our best, David or me, to read that on air, address your comment, query, question, story idea. It's your chance to have your say. On Odyssey, it's called a hyper chat. And on Super U, it's called a shout. And this is a way for you to let your dollars do the talking. If you like what we're doing and if you want to have your say, throw a little bit of money our way. And we appreciate the fact that there are many places where you could spend your money. Money's tighter than it ever was, but you choose us. So we appreciate that. And I think it's a good way to democratize the show and make it a little bit more spontaneous. The mainstream media, they close up their comment section. They're happy to take your money, but they certainly don't want to hear from the people they're taking it from. For us, it's completely the opposite. We live and die on the support of our viewers.
100%. And I mean, so much to get to as always, Sheila. And maybe because it just happened less than 24 hours ago, super cameraman Maurizio and I went off to Ottawa to cover the March for Life. A few thousand people showed up. And of course, there was a much smaller counter-protest group. Very young people, too, which I think speaks of the indoctrination you hear about, because I'm sure many of them were minors, to be quite frank, although there were several that I don't think they're capable of having a baby anymore because they're on the advanced age spectrum.
That's sometimes these counter-protesters for the March for Life, you're like, did you lose your way with the osteoporosis march? Like, those ladies are over there. Those postmenopausal marms, they're over there. Catch up with them.
Oh, 100%, Sheila. So there was that. There were these transgendered people. And I'm not being funny here. I didn't know if they were male to female or female to male. So instead of saying sir and ma'am, when I do my interviews, I would go, my friend, right? I would be as gender neutral as possible.
That's what they say you're supposed to do if you're an elementary school teacher now. You're not supposed to say boys and girls. You're supposed to say friends or children. So good job, David.
I kind of felt like the PA announcer at Disney World. No more men and women or boys and girls and ladies and gentlemen, just friends, like the Frankenstein monster likes to say when he's trying to reach out. And, and there was a Satanist too. So we know
every time.
So we know what
You're
the pro-life people stand for. That goes without saying. But I think we might have a clip where I wade into the mouth of madness to speak to the counter-protesters to try to get their opinions and also to talk about the very thorny subject of sex-selective abortions, which is the very definition of misogyny, which you'd think these people will be against. But anyways, instead of me rambling on, let's throw to a clip and see what I encountered. Hello, guys. How you doing then? Mammy, your
my
sign
God,
says no
Margaret
return
Atwood
to
again. Get another
backstreet
book.
abortions.
Right, and there's
Okay.
another one I'd like you to see.
By the way, is that truly a fear here in Canada? We don't have an abortion law since the 1980s.
This is my message to you.
Public service announcement, FU. That's not very ladylike.
Oh, we're not ladies when we're fighting for our rights.
Oh, I see. Okay, then.
Yeah,
Speaking
we're
of
women.
ladies.
We're women. No.
What? Speaking.
Not doing it. Here it is. There it is.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to have a civil conversation, get your point of view.
Sure you are.
Yeah.
I'm sure you are. You're trying to take back our rights. That's right.
Okay, well, have the rights been taken away? Is it illegal in Canada to have an abortion, ma'am? I guess not. And, sir, yours says make Margaret Atwood fiction again. What does that sign mean?
I don't want to talk to you.
Oh, okay then.
Get a new book. Get a new book. There are other books other than The Handmaid's Tale. Please get another book.
Oh, Margaret, Sheila. I was thinking of Margaret Atwood, of course. I felt at one point I
Thanks
was
for
at
nothing,
Comic-Con
David.
because there were
there's
so
another
many
curly-haired
gals.
lady.
What's that, Sheila?
So there's another unkept curly-haired lady, but
Oh,
Margaret
there were
Atwood.
so many decked out in red handmaiden costumes. Like I said, it was almost like being at Comic-Con down in San Diego. But that's just a sample. It got much worse. And, maybe we can dig up another one because they really get into knot, Sheila, when they're all about a woman's right to choose. And there's two angles that I pursued at the counter protest. One is, where did my body, my choice go the past 2 years when it came to people losing their jobs and being economically disciplined for not having the COVID shot go into their body? And secondly, when it comes to sex-selective abortions, there are some studies that indicate in the neighborhood of 100 million baby girls since the 1970s were aborted simply for being baby girls. These are typically in countries where a male child is deemed far more important than a female child. And it had nothing to do with economic reasons, nothing to do with the mother's health or the baby's health, nothing. Simply because that baby did not have the Y chromosome, it is aborted. And to me, Sheila, that's the textbook definition of misogyny. You are actually killing a female for being a female. They cannot answer it. They play that, well, that's other culture, so I don't want to wade into that. Well, why not? It's a downright genocide, for goodness sakes.
Yeah, it's a prenatal femicide, as they say. And this policy, it's playing out right now, like 3 decades out in China, where they had their one-child policy, which means that subsequent pregnancies were terminated if they were naturally they chose boys. If they had to choose a pregnancy, they would choose the boys. And so now it's like a lost generation of men that have no family, no prospects, no wife, and it is causing real social cohesion problems in China because there are all these missing girls. When you don't have men who can aspire to have a family, aspire to have a wife. We know that married people do better because you have different goals, right? You would think a single person, they don't have to, have kids and pay for kids. But when you have different goals, and priorities, you do better financially because you're like, I have to start accumulating wealth in a house because I have to put a roof over the head of my family. I have to think about the future and start investing my money and saving for a rainy day because you have a wife, because you have kids, because you have people dependent on you. And it causes all these social decay problems all along the way. It's playing out in real time in China. And in the Western world, we think, you know what, no big deal, just women's rights, it's fine.
No, you raise many good points there, Sheila, and you have to wonder, because really when you let nature take its course, regardless of the species, it's basically going to be almost 50-50 male, female. It's just the way it rolls. Once you start skewering the stats, it's like 53% males, 47% females, 54, 46. That's significant. And it means that if matrimony is a game of musical chairs, there's going to be a hell of a lot guys because of this bias towards male children that are not going to get a seat. And, you could even go further, Sheila. You have to wonder if this will contribute in the future to an increase in the incel movement, because there's simply no longer enough females available for all the eligible bachelors. I mean, I hope I'm wrong about that, but that could be an unintended consequence too.
It's a nightmare unfolding in China right now. There are 120 men for every 100 women in China, and they call them China's womanless men.
Yep.
And they're saying it's a complete calamity that's unfolding. They say this imbalance between the sexes is basically causing listless men, drug addiction, homelessness. It's just an absolute nightmare. And instead of doing something about it here, we are fast tracking down this path and calling it women's rights. They have villages of just bachelors who go off to live because it's hard to live in a society where you see the people around you living the life that you could live if there were just somebody out there for you. But there are enough of them that they're basically ghettoizing themselves in bachelor villages.
Sheila, I bet you the far left here in the Western world has a solution to this problem, and it would be this. Well, for those males in China that can't get a girlfriend or a wife, the solution is obvious. Transition to a female and balance out the numbers that way.
It's just, these women at the counter protesting, by the way. Let me guess. I was not in Ottawa, but let me just describe the March for Life. Overwhelmingly female, pretty young, lots of minorities, and well-behaved and prayerful. Am I right?
Oh, more than that, Sheila, from a reporting point of view, do you think that one single person on the pro-life sign gave me the middle finger right in my face, used profanity? One guy grabbed my hat and threw it like it was Captain America's shield, right in front of the police, by the way. And technically that's assault, but, anything goes, I guess. It was like those were the adults in the room. And not only were these people infantile on the other side, they were having constant temper tantrums. I asked questions very civilly, I think. I was just putting facts out there. And when it interferes with their logic process, when it interferes with their indoctrination, they go into no comment mode. And by the way, no comment lady was there. We missed her. I think.
Oh, I knew it.
I know. It's my biggest regret. It's like being in a fishing derby and there was like briefly a great white shark swimming by. But other than that, they resort to profanity, disgusting symbols and outright assault. And I'm of the point of view, Sheila, that if you can't articulate your position without resorting to bad language and physicality, well, you know what? You probably don't have a very good position to start with.
Well, and especially when your argument is those people over there want to control my life. They're out to get me, but you're the one using violence to try to control the political and religious opinions of other people.
Yeah. No, and by the way, when you're bringing in, as I mentioned, there was a guy there preaching Satanism, and he had a flag with the, I guess it's the pentagram. If you're so anti-religion, then why are you using the symbols of, can we call Satanism a religion? I guess we can. I don't know how many people subscribe to it. But it's just bizarre. And why attach yourself to something that's all about darkness and pain and suffering and eternal damnation That's what you're selling on Parliament Hill? Holy mackerel.
It's my understanding that the modern Satanist doesn't even actually believe in Satan. They really don't believe in anything except the self. That whole, like, do what thou willst, which is just if it feels good, do it.
Yeah.
It's basically, and then we've rebranded like self-care. If you're spend any time on female Facebook, you'll just be inundated with that garbage. But it's this selfish notion that you should always pursue happiness.
Yeah.
Goodness be damned. That happiness is the end goal in life, and not doing good and leaving behind a better place. And so you're seeing a lot of that, and that's why it ties in perfectly with this.
And look how peaceful these people are,
If it makes
Sheila.
you happy,
yeah.
If it makes you happy, if you can just erase your problems by dismembering it and putting it into a garbage disposal, then that's just fine.
Yeah. Well, let's look on the bright side. At least Prime Minister Trudeau and Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson didn't close off the downtown to the pro-life march like they did just 2 weeks ago to the Rolling Thunder, which was an absolute disgrace. And by the way, very few politicians on the Hill, Sheila. We bumped into two of them, Jim and Belinda Karahalios. But how odd that this topic is seen as such a third-rail issue by Canadian politicians that they won't even come out and address their position one way or the other. I think there was an NDP politician. I don't know if he's elected or not, but he was on the counter demonstration side. Yes, of course, naturally. But you have all these thousands of people there, and there's just such cowardice on the Hill that nobody will come out and say anything one way or the other. I guess in a way it reflects our law on abortion in Canada, which is there is no law, which is the Supreme Court back in the early 80s punted it back to Parliament to come up with some kind of a law. And here we are some 40 years later and nothing, which I think is despicable, Sheila, because I think we're the only Western nation without a law. We're certainly one of the few countries in the world without a law, and nobody will tackle it, just like nobody will tackle the healthcare crisis that is only going to get worse as the population ages. But last word goes to you, my friend.
Yeah, I think no matter where you fall down on this issue, Canada right now has the elusive, I guess, in the Western world, infamy of joining North Korea and China on this issue in allowing a child to be terminated all the way up until the time it takes its first breath outside of its mother. That is atrocious. I think that is a fundamental human rights issue. And there are a lot of people at the March for Life who say, I maybe have a different idea about when life begins. For some, it's conception. For some, it's viability. But we need a law, some kind of law. And for these like old, miserable, dishonest marms to be out there, it's sad. They probably don't have grandchildren to appreciate. So, I just think about their sad, miserable, empty, barren lives. But if it's so dishonest because they say, oh, you're here to try to take away our rights, just like what is happening in the United States with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. We are more liberal with this issue than the most liberal of United States. Worse than California, worse than New York. So I'm sorry, nobody's trying to take away any of your rights. They're maybe trying to protect the most vulnerable amongst us, but they just can't see it from the other side. And I know we're trying to move on from this issue. Yeah.
And by the way, Cuba and North Korea, what wonderful company we keep on so many issues. But before we leave, super producer Olivia says we have one more clip to leave the folks with. The full video will be up maybe even later today. And you'll see all the all the insanity on one side and all the civility on the other side. I'll let you pick out who's who in the zoo. In the meantime, let's check out this clip. Hi, ma'am. I'm just reading your sign. Pro-choice reproductive freedom fighter. What is the message you're trying to convey here?
I don't really want to speak to Rebel News,
Is
sorry.
it right? Oh, we can't have a civil conversation?
No, we can have a civil conversation, but...
One quick question. What is your opinion on sex-selective abortions? Since the 1970s, some studies...
This is why I'm not interested in speaking, because that is a red herring. It's a false flag.
Is it really that 100 million girls have been aborted simply because of their sex? Well, that's a red herring. Wow.
Yeah, again, missing from the osteoporosis awareness march. You know, like that lady's having a hot flash as she's talking to you, worried about reproductive rights. If you have grandchildren at home, go home and play with them. Go appreciate the gift that children are, instead of lobbying to have more of them dismembered.
How is that a red herring, Sheila? I would argue the opposite. It's the crux of the matter.
It's not. That is exactly the thing they twist themselves in knots about.
Yeah.
Okay, you tell me you care about women's rights. Me too. I care about their right to be born. And, you know, to say it's a red herring, I'm sorry. But this is unfolding in Asia right now with millions and millions and millions, as you say, 100 million girls, missing girls. And that's just in China.
Yeah.
In China, where they have, you know, 100 and some, I think, what do I say, 120 men for every 100 women?
Correct.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
That's terrible. That is people who will be unhappy. Their hopes for themselves, their potential will never be fulfilled.
Yeah.
Because someone has just decided their partner was not worthy of life.
100%. Well, Sheila, we must move on because there's a subject that's even more important than the abortion debate, if you can believe it. Evidently,
Sure.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh got heckled in Peterborough, Ontario. Gracious, has a royal commission been struck yet? I think we have some video before we get into the commentary, so let's roll that.
Oh, rough language alert, by the way. Rough language. There's going to be rough language, so just be careful.
You're a piece of shit! Talk shit about us freedom-loving Canadians! You fucking traitor! You're a fucking traitor! You're a fucking traitor! You're a fucking traitor to this country! Fuck you! You fucking freedom convoy! Go fuck yourself! Fuck yourself!
I don't know. At least
the humanity. Oh, by the way, Sheila, I have to point out, did you see what he buggered off in? That looked to me like a V8 Chevy Suburban. I thought this guy was all about the war on the climate. But given that it happened in Peterborough, where I was given a huge fine, which we're fighting in court, by the way, folks, for shaking hands and laughing in public during a demonstration. I'm not making this up, folks. We did a video on this. This is how pathetic the Peterborough Police Service is under that jabroni of a chief they have that goes about in his short pants. In any event, you're a political figure. You're the leader of a party. You're the fourth place leader propping up a horrible liberal government and actually doing flip-flops on things that you were once against and now you support. So what? You got some, blue language thrown your way. You got the middle finger tossed your way, much like, by the way, Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau used to do on his famous train travel through the West back in the 70s. And now this is a cause celeb, Sheila? Give me a break. And one last point. This is also the leader, even though we fought successfully twice to get into the leaders' debates for the federal election campaigns, would not take our questions. Singh is a coward, and he deserved everything he got in Peterborough, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, you know what? First of all, he's wearing a mask in a vehicle. What are you doing? But besides all that, if those people actually wanted to hurt him, they could have. He walked through a big crowd All they did was yell at him. They could have ragdolled him. There were enough of them there. A lot of them were bikers, big, burly, blue-collar guys. If they wanted to cause a scene and hurt him, they could have. They didn't, because words are not violence. And you know what? As Cosmin Georgia from True North points out, you partner with Trudeau, you prop up Trudeau, you're going to get the Trudeau treatment.
Yeah.
And that's what they gave him. I'm sorry, but he partnered with Trudeau to prop up Trudeau after his extreme violations of civil rights, peaceful protest, seizing bank accounts, calling people racist, sexist, misogynist, blaming the unvaccinated for societal problems, even though it's everybody's getting COVID. But by and large, it's the vaccinated who are in the hospital. You know, so what? People yelled at you. This is what happens. This is what happens. You know what? Sure, maybe the language is a little bit rough, but I'm not going to tone police people who have lost everything because of this government.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. These are desperate, angry people. They were not violent with you. They could very easily have been violent. They weren't. They told you what they thought of you. I'm sorry you don't like it, but that's politics. And if you're too weak or soft for that kind of stuff, then there's no way he could do our job, let alone vie to be the prime minister, which is what you want to be when you are the leader of an official political party federally.
You know, Sheila, you said something there. Words are not violence. Isn't it odd how some police services don't understand that? The Ottawa Police Service, for example, when they had that press conference back in February where the chief did the Sergeant Schultz routine and didn't know that our beloved colleague Alexa Lavoie was shot with some kind of canister in the thigh, I dare say if that was a couple of feet higher in the face, we might be talking about our colleague in the past tense. He had no knowledge of that, but he ended the press conference after the Q&A by saying, applauding the mainstream media's behavior and how they're launching investigations about slurs thrown their way. Yeah, so if you're Rebel News Alexa Lavoie actually having to go to hospital with an injury from some trigger-happy thug, that's okay or even unknown. But if you're CTV's chief soy boy, Evan Solomon, who had an F-bomb tossed his way, that's going to be an investigation. I guarantee you, Sheila, if I got written up for smiling, laughing, and handshaking at a Peterborough protest, what do you want to bet the Peterborough Police Service is going to launch an investigation on that? And you know what? There's by the way the ticketed for laughing.
The People's Republic of Peterborough.
But I guarantee you, I don't know on what grounds they'll go after people for blue language and middle finger salutes. But like you said earlier, that's not a crime.
Yeah, and you know what else? I'm sure the mainstream media are going to act as the enforcers here. If they find out who these people were that were doing the yelling, they're going to call their employers. They're going to camp out on their neighbor's lawn. Here comes the campaign of harassment, because we have to make sure that the little people never get the opportunity to speak truth to power. Yeah, and by the way, and I don't know about you, David, but I'd rather have somebody call me the F and B word, because that's a matter of opinion. I could be those things depending on the day and my mood, and the things we're discussing, then be called a racist, extremist, neo-Nazi, because I am not any of those things. Those are statements of fact. And to call people those things, like Justin Trudeau does, like Jagmeet Singh does, that's malicious. That's a lie.
Yeah.
But if someone calls you an effing joke or whatever, I don't know, could be true, depending on, that's a matter of opinion, and it could be true, and people are entitled to their opinions in this country. You don't have to like them, but they do still have a right to express them, and sometimes they will express them in distasteful ways. Suck it up and move on. Who gives a darn? Like, you're one of the most powerful people in the country. He's actually, I would suggest, maybe the de facto prime minister, because at this point, Justin Trudeau was not prime minister without Jagmeet Singh.
That's right.
And those are two not very bright men, controlling all the levers of power in this country. So, be prepared for pushback, when you are doing things behind the scenes, striking secret deals that ruin people's lives, ban them from seeing their families, prevent them from going to funerals, weddings, family get-togethers, visiting their grandparents. Sorry, but prepare for blowback.
And, Sheila, I got to be honest, I have more contempt for Jagmeet Singh than I do for Justin Trudeau. He's the leader of a fourth place party. He plays it both ways. He talks out of both sides of his mouth. He says, the Trudeau Liberals are carrying out a gross misdeed in terms of whatever the issue is. Oh, but we're going to vote in favor of him. No problem. That's garbage. It's almost gross the way this man is behaving. And you brought this upon yourself, my friend. As Sheila said, when you have people losing their jobs, losing their businesses, and it's okay by you because you're a champagne socialist and it doesn't matter what the common man and woman are going through. Yeah, expect a little verbal abuse when you tour about the country.
I don't recommend doing it, but the whining is a little bit much. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a proponent of people cursing out politicians on the street, but I'm not going to scold anybody for it either. No. I don't care. I have no pity for these people whatsoever. After everything they've done, I don't have any giving a darn left in my heart for the feelings of politicians. Now, would I do it? No. Would I probably be mad at my husband for a couple of days if he did it? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe the afternoon. But I'm not going to tone police anybody who's lost everything when they get a chance to yell at a politician.
What do you do, Sheila Gunn Reid, or what does your husband do, rather, that makes you mad?
Do you know what? When he comes home from camp, we had this conversation the other day. I'm not a campy. I don't work in a camp. Don't leave your stuff all over the place. That's the one thing that bothers me. When he comes home from camp and he's sort of in camp mode because he's been gone for sometimes months, right? And he forgets that this is not a work camp. There are not a bunch of people who come around behind you and clean up after you when you leave the house. Just anyway.
For Lady Menzoid, I have to admit, because I just love it so much, I go out of my way to purposely annoy her because I think, Sheila, you only annoy the ones you love. And typically
then you love me deeply.
What breaks her spine is that we'll be talking about something serious and I'll look at her like a little child and I'll go, all I'm asking for is a little cooperation. And her lower lip starts to quiver and I know I've hit the right button. I just love it. I don't know, but
you know what? It's a miracle you're still alive. And no jury would convict that woman. Anyways, before we move on to some of the other things that are in the headline of the YouTube description, because we should touch on those because, again, I get emails if we don't. I just want to take a minute to point out that Elon Musk has come around to my way of thinking on plastic straws. He wants to end the war on single-use plastics, I think, or at least straws, which is a step in the right direction because stop the war on straws. And once you have realized that there should be no war on straws, then the natural progression of that is there should be no war on single-use plastics. And he tweeted about it twice now over the course of 24 hours. So I'm really excited to have a friend and ally in the war on single-use plastics in the form of a apparently kind of benevolent billionaire. I can't wait.
The straw
war is emblematic of larger social issues. Yes, that's exactly where I am.
I don't care which side of the political spectrum you're on. His tweets, it's like stand-up comedy worthy. He's really got a great sense of humor. But of course, in the progressive far left Marxism movement, humor is an endangered species. Isn't that funny, Sheila, when you do see zealots on that side of the spectrum, they're never laughing. They're never joking, right? I wonder why that is. But I love his tweets. And the sooner he gets into the driver's seat, I know it's a few months away, and I heard of some snag today, but I'm sure it's going to be taken care of, the better it will be for all of us who believe in freedom of speech. And I know for you on the far left, I know freedom is the new F word for you, but us here in the state of normalcy, we kind of like it.
Yeah. Yeah, go have your opinion. Just go do it peacefully. Just don't yell at people. Well, yell at people. I don't care, but just don't hit people. Don't steal their hats. They're prone to getting sunburns. Like David Menzies here. That hat protects the CBC journalist from his hair, but it also protects our sweet David Menzies from the sun. One more thing before we move on to the other thing with Roxham Road. I dropped this in the chat, our live stream chat where we plan. And I thought the headline was interesting because once you read the crux of the story, you're like, is this a center where they abuse kids or where they treat kids who were abused? Let's bring that up, please. It's the New York Post article. Child Sex Abuse Center hires a professor who faced a backlash over pedophile comments. So this is ostensibly, I think, although based on their hiring practices, I could be wrong, a center that works to help children overcome trauma due to abuse, but maybe it's a place where they abuse children. I'm not so sure. This is an academic who previously resigned from a Virginia university after saying it wasn't necessarily immoral for adults to be attracted to kids, has been hired by a Johns Hopkins University center aimed at preventing child sexual abuse. They're excited to have her there. It comes just six months after she was basically forced out. He, I'm not sure, was announced that the 34-year-old would be stepping down as an assistant professor of sociology and criminal justice. Now she works at this center. She, again, I'm sorry, works at this center. And they said it's important instead to use the word, instead of pedophile, minor attracted persons, because it's less stigmatizing. I can't think of a group I would want to be stigmatized more than pedophiles. And this just turns it into like a sexual preference instead of a crime, an abusive crime. These people are awful.
Well, Sheila, I think it's par for the course. You might remember about 10 years ago. I'm struggling to remember his name. Maybe we can conjure it up. But one of the architects of the McGinty-Wynne sex ed curriculum. Do you remember him?
Ben Levin, yeah.
That's it. Thank you. He was charged with not only consuming kiddie porn, but actually creating it, if memory serves me. And this is someone who's responsible for the sex ed curriculum. By the way, the sex ed curriculum that when Patrick Brown was courting social conservatives when he was running for the leadership of the PC Party of Ontario said, oh yeah, get me in and this trash is thrown overboard. And then when he does get in, he goes, oh no, there's nothing wrong here. He didn't say this, but this is what he meant. I was just saying that so you'd vote for me. Sorry, sucker. But yeah, that is.
Then when you call these people groomers, they get offended, and I'm like, but literally, you are.
You do, Sheila, and also I've noticed in the terminology being used because let's face it, pedophile. That's really a harsh term for a mature male looking upon in a sexual context a young boy. Oh, pedophile. That's got a lot of baggage. So the new name for those who are giving a pass to this disgusting behavior, illegal behavior, is intergenerational love. How do you like that, Sheila? And
oh my goodness,
it's in the infancy right now, but 10, 20 years from now, who knows? Is this the new radical trans movement? The idea of mature adults saying, how dare you judge me? I'm biologically hardwired to be sexually attracted to a minor. I am not a pedophile. I am an adherent to intergenerational love. It wouldn't surprise me, Sheila.
I'm just trying to digest all of this. I can't even imagine how society has fallen. We're every day that we aren't subject to a good old-fashioned biblical smiting is a day that we're living on borrowed time,
Yeah. Get those locusts flying already, will you?
You know what? I often say, like, when you're leaving some of these big progressive cities, make sure you don't turn back. Don't turn around. You might turn into a pillar of salt. Okay, let's move on to the Roxham Road issue, because we have data that shows that closing Roxham Road actually does stop the flow of asylum seekers, because there was a time in which it was closed during the pandemic before they reopened it, and lo and behold, when you close something, people can't get through it.
Yeah, ain't that funny?
Happened. It's weird, right? But Justin Trudeau says that closing Roxham Road border crossing will not stop the arrival of asylum seekers. Well, we know that that's not true, because when it was closed, it did stop the arrival of asylum seekers. But you know what? Also, what's the harm in trying? If you think that the illegal asylum seekers are a problem, and I think the consensus is it kind of is. You shouldn't have people walking into the country. I think the idea that Justin Trudeau is saying, well, we should do something, but closing the border won't work, is an acknowledgement that there's a bit of a problem here. He says, if we close Roxham Road, people will cross elsewhere. Okay, well, let's just close that too.
Yeah.
I don't know. We have an enormous border, and we're not going to start arming or putting fences on it. Okay, but you armed and put fences in Ottawa to stop bouncy castles. Maybe you could put a fence up to stop people just wandering into the country willy-nilly. That might work too,
Oh, great point, Sheila. And you're absolutely right. Yeah, closing Roxham Road won't stop the illegal aliens from going through. But how about a fence? How about a wall? How about how we were treated?
I saw how quick the fences went up in Ottawa. Let's try that. Let's just try that at Roxham Road.
Sheila, not only fences, but you might recall the video. It was Lincoln J. And myself just trying to get to our hotel room. We had proof that we're staying at that hotel, and we were stopped. I'll never forget her name, that OPP officer, Officer Dyke. I guess we all have our things. I know I won't say anything, but Officer Dyke wasn't going to let us through. So here we are, law-abiding, tax-paying citizens practicing journalism. We're not even part of the convoy that Sheila was talking about. And we want to get home to our hotel, our temporary home, primarily because we're freezing. It was like minus 28, I think. And we're getting all this, your papers, please, routine. And meanwhile, at Roxham Road, you're an illegal alien. We don't know who you are. You don't have any idea. That's okay. Come on in. And guess what? The RCMP will reinvent themselves as the Royal Canadian Bellhop Police and carry your Gucci luggage over the border for you. What a disgrace. And what a defeatist attitude by our Prime Minister. Fence off, wall off those areas that are problematic, because if you are a sovereign nation and you can't protect your own borders, guess what? You are not a sovereign nation. That is the bare minimum benchmark of sovereignty in my book, Sheila.
Yeah, I don't understand this argument. Well, if we just wall this off, they're going to go through somewhere else. Okay, then we'll put a fence up over there.
Yeah.
And then the next place where I think this is a self-fixing problem here, because then we're helping identify where the problem areas are, so that we don't necessarily have to build a fence across the whole length of the world's largest undefended border. We could just build the fence where people are crossing. That's one of the things about the wall in Israel. It's not always a wall. It's not always. Sometimes it's a fence. Sometimes it's sensors on the ground. You know what? There are ways to do this, but we also shouldn't make it really easy for people to just break the rules and end up in our country. Maybe we should start with a place where you can take a taxi from the local airport, a taxi on the side that says Roxham Road, so you know which taxi to jump into that will traffic you to the Canadian border, and then just walk into Canada and wait 4 years for your immigration hearing.
Well, Sheila, as you know, on the New York side, an entire cottage industry has sprung up. including consultants, including taxi cabs that bring the illegal aliens right to the proper location. And it's funny too, Sheila. It's not a two-way street, is it? If you go right down to the border of Alberta and, say, Montana, you sneak over and see how you're treated and see what fines you're assessed with. It's funny that, isn't it? How if a law-abiding, tax-paying Canadian citizen does the same shenanigans, the heavy hand of the law will come down on you like a papal bull.
You know what? Fair enough. I'm sure the DHS agents in Montana are some of the best in the business. So, good for them protecting their border. And it's funny because we see the Biden administration, good on the governor of Texas. He's sort of taking the migrants that are crossing the border and then dropping them off in Washington and saying, you're letting them come in. You figure it out. But Biden is, some people are saying you're using these illegal migrants as a cudgel. Maybe not, but they got to go somewhere. And Texas is doing its part to keep the border safe. Let Democrat politicians figure this out. But the Biden administration is also taking plane loads of illegal border crossers from their southern border and bringing them north. So where do you think those people are going to end up?
Yeah.
If you bring them north, if you drop them in upstate New York, you think they're going to stay in upstate New York? Or are they going to jump in one of those cabs that say Roxham Road right on the side, and the cab comes up, it's a minivan, comes up and just lets them out. And by the way, nobody in upstate New York is cracking down on what is very obvious human trafficking. But I guess whatever.
Yeah, well, Sheila, President Biden and Prime Minister Trudeau it's two faces of the same coin, if you ask me. Where I mentioned how our
two halves of the same brain cell.
Yeah, our Mounties carry the luggage of our illegals into Canada. Meanwhile, Biden is making sure that illegals in his country are not denied baby formula, as tax-paying Americans are right now because of the baby formula crisis that's going on that might not be resolved for another 3 months because it stems from that factory in Michigan that produces so much of it, and it's going to take that much time to get the system up and running. Hello, does anyone realize that babies, the timeline of a 3-month period,
they can't
put their baby formula feeding regimen on hold for that amount of time? This is absolutely it's grotesque, Sheila, and it's being done for the unspoken strategy of this, which is Biden is making sure you come up through Mexico, Central America, and South America, you get into the country scot-free, and we'll even feed your babies, unlike tax-paying Americans. And all we ask in terms of the quid pro quo is every 4 years, you vote Team Blue, you vote Democrat. That's it. That's all.
It's terrible. And, there's a lot of people online who are like, well, just breastfeed your babies. Sure. Okay, fine. But that's not always an option.
Yep.
And sometimes there's only one brand of formula your baby can stomach.
Yep.
And when that's off the shelf, I can't imagine the horror that these mothers are feeling, thinking, how do I feed my baby now? It's just a
Sheila,
nightmare.
There is a committee that Biden has struck, I understand. It's going to meet in 2 weeks to address this issue, right?
2 weeks?
Why aren't they meeting right now? Why are they meeting on Saturday morning? Because remember, they got to reopen the factory, which remains closed, and then the people that run the factory say it's going to take 3 months. This all stems from 2 babies that died, 2 that got very sick, and they inspected the factory, and they found it's not the factory's fault. It was some other kind of circumstance. Well, if President Trump was still in office, he would override the FDA and get that factory up and running today. Forget about a committee meeting in 2 weeks. This is an outrage, and I feel sorry for any American woman right now that is going without formula for her baby, as you rightly said, breastfeeding is not an option, and other brands of formula are often not an option too. So it is a despicable disgrace what we're seeing there.
American infants going hungry. American infants going hungry. Shipping supplies and everything to the Ukraine while American infants are going hungry. The priorities of this president are upside down. You can do both, but he's doing only one. And if you have a choice to only do one, you got to look after American babies first.
Well, Sheila, on that regard, maybe some of these women with infants should just fly down to Mexico, cross the border illegally, and the formula will be there for you. And we're not talking boxes of formula. I'm talking pallets and pallets of formula. Plenty to go around there. So maybe that's the solution.
I don't know. I just feel like, how do we as Canadians help these women, help these moms feed their babies? Like, what can we do? And I'm not saying the government. Like, what can normal people do?
Well, Sheila, I see we're 5 minutes to the hour, and
I know that went by so fast.
It's unbelievable. Time flies when you're having fun, and I got to tell you, if anyone is in the Southern Ontario area, I think it's Dakota and I will be going out to the Friday the 13th celebration at Port Dover, Ontario. Every Friday the 13th they go there. Last year, Friday the 13th was in August, a gorgeous day, much like today here in May, Friday the 13th. And the mayor of Norfolk County, which includes Port Dover, last year because of COVID, declared the celebration a non-event. I think she also declared gravity a non-event and the Earth's rotation around the sun a non-event. Well, guess what? Bikers being bikers, which is to say they kind of like freedom, showed up in the thousands. So sorry, Mayor Chop. I don't know if you declared today's event a non-event because of COVID like you did last year, but expect to see that number. Maybe 10,000 bikers. I wouldn't be surprised, Sheila. The weather is perfect, and people want to have fun. And, oh, by the way, despite that gathering last year, Port Dover was not a super spreader event for COVID. So, hey, Mayor Chop, you want to stay in your house in the fetal position in the basement. Fill your boots, but don't get in the way of the Friday the 13th ride. That's what I have to say.
Yeah, it reminds me of Michael Scott on The Office, just walking out and declaring bankruptcy. I declare bankruptcy, and then figuring that was it. It was like her doing the same thing, saying, "Oh, it's not an event. Oh, well, that settles it. I guess it's not a thing now. It doesn't exist anymore."
Unbelievable.
Not quite how reality works. Let's get into.
And by the
some
way,
of
Sheila, that's a very important point for the merchants. This is Christmas Day on steroids.
Yeah.
And especially during a lockdown year, as was last year, this was so important for the economy. And for some elected official to say, I declare this a non-event, like she's got some kind of supernatural power to stem it from happening. Unbelievable. But of course, she's not in the private sector. She's getting a constant paycheck courtesy of the taxpayer. So I suppose that explains her virtue signaling.
Right, to do Zoom meetings and Zoom city council or whatever. Let's just hope she has clothes on. Okay, we've got Yankee Pollock sent Yankee, our social media guru, sends us a buck and says, I love the meetings. You know what, Yankee, you're the highlight of those meetings for me. David, you only have to listen to Yankee in the morning calls. I get Yankee morning calls, evening calls, and all of our management meetings throughout the day. And it's a real joy and a pleasure. And
his best phrase has become iconic is, I got guns. I don't know what that means. Maybe he does have guns, but.
I'm glad. He lives in the free state of Florida. I hope he has lots of guns. Kierdorf sends us $5. Thanks for everything, Rebel News. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Yankee, I'm just teasing. I enjoy Yankee very much, actually. I'm just teasing. Fraser McBurney, our caps lock loving friend from Hamilton, sends us $5. I want to congratulate Rebel News on your new reporter, Juan Mendoza.
Oh.
Juan Carlos Mendoza Diaz, which is such a fun name to say. So fun. What a great idea for reporting in Spanish. Over 1 billion Spanish speakers. And also, we think it's important that we tell the other side of the story of the Spanish community in the United States. It's not just Mexicans or Hispanics living in border towns, Mexicans who migrated legally and did all the right things. It's, Hispanics who've always lived in those border towns. It's the Cuban expat community in Miami. There are a lot of freedom-loving people who speak Spanish. And, the whole point is they're sort of rebelling against the narrative that the Democrats own their votes, because they don't. And so often these bad Democrat policies are hurting Hispanic communities.
Of course.
Even, especially in Texas. I forget there's a mayor down there who's a Democrat, and she's speaking out against, she's a Hispanic Democrat mayor, and she's speaking out against the Biden border policies, saying this is destroying our communities. This has to stop. This is not the way you get into America. And, one of my favorite ads from the Trump 2020 campaign was, I think it was the Latinos for Trump, with the fun Spanish music in the background. I had that on my phone for the longest time, as when Ezra called me, it would play the Latinos for Trump music. It was so fun. It was one of my favorite ads. So anyways, I think Juan's going to do a great job. There's so many things to talk about in, Miami, Texas, and we're looking to expand just beyond Juan, our Spanish language team. Because again, let's talk about LA, where you've got a bunch of privileged white Democrat voters living in safe communities saying, let's defund the police. And who gets hurt? People in low-income Hispanic communities.
Yeah, those are the people that call the Latino and Latina communities Latinx, which no Latino I've ever met has ever called. Yeah, but you're right. Juan, I think, is going to evolve into the Rebel News version of Razor Ramon. And to paraphrase the slogan
Spanish
of the late, great Razor, something happened to the truth, something going to happen to you, Chico.
Yeah, I don't think Scott Hall was even Hispanic. I don't think Scott Hall was Latino, even one bit. It was just a thing.
Scott Hall. There's a great Latino name.
Scott Hall. Anyway, yeah, I'm really excited to see what Juan does next and grow the team there, because that is the true rebel mission, to tell the other side of the story. About the Latino voters who are like, I'm pretty sure I'm not Latinx, or however you say that.
Sheila, when I first saw that word, I thought, is this a Marvel Comics spin-off of the X-Men? I mean, they're located in Mexico or Spain or something. I mean, Latinx, like Latin X-Men, they all speak Spanish. I mean, how did this ever come to be a thing? And like I said, I've never met anyone from the Latino community that embraces that term. Never.
I think the first time I met Juan, we were in a meeting, and he said something about Latino voters or something. I said, Juan, I'm sorry, but you're being a racist. It's Latinx. I don't know how to say it. Matt Walsh says Latinx to be funny, so that's how I'm going to say it too. Okie doke. So let's keep moving on. Annalisa, 1964. This is the lady president of the David Menzies fan club.
Membership too.
Who else is in it?
Pardon me?
Who else is in it? This is a good question.
Well, you, of course, Sheila.
All right.
I want my comic book back. You are not deserving of that Red Sonja She-Devil with a sword comic if you're going to be mean to me like that.
I'm not being mean. I just don't want to be the secretary. I'll be the treasurer, as long as I don't have to be the secretary. I'm not taking notes. Annalisa gives us $10. Almost missed my two favorite people. My man is a mechanic and his fingerprints are everywhere. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Donald.
Keep reading.
Yeah. I almost told the world my husband's name. But Mr. Reed was outside working on the swather yesterday. And he's like, hey, I was going back and forth in the yard. And he's like, hey, can you give me a hand with this? And I'm sure. And he's like, hold this. I'm like, just covered in grease. I'm like, no, you're on your own. I'm going back. I'm going into the house. But yeah, the fingerprints everywhere. And also the washing the coveralls in the washing machine when I'm trying to work. And I'm like, what are you doing? Washing a bag of pennies? Why does it sound like that? It's all the buttons and snaps clanging around when you're trying to work and you need silence. That's when he's like, figures out how to use the washing machine today. I'm like, you haven't used that thing in 6 months. Why do you have to wash coveralls at this moment? Anyway, sorry. Sorry, honey, if you're upstairs. Anyway, looking sexy, waxy. Oh, God. Looking sexy, waxy Menzies. Sorry, Sheila, I made you read this.
Sorry, Sheila, my earpiece kicked out on that second last sentence. Could you reread it, please?
No, I was dry heaving. That's fine. Let's keep going.
Thank you, Annalisa.
Becca Henderson. I kid. Becca Henderson gives us a buck. Why is Trudeau concerned about banning unvaxxed Americans from crossing? And why is Biden concerned with Canadians crossing while south border is open? It's like they want people to cross illegally. Yeah, we know that 60% of the illegal border crossers into Canada are unvaccinated.
Yep.
And we also know that many of the Ukrainian refugees coming to Canada are unvaccinated. Now, let me just say, I don't care if they're vaccinated or not. But Justin Trudeau seems to care if Canadian travelers are vaccinated, and that's where I have the problem. Look, if we need to take Canadian or Ukrainian refugees, happy to help. Send them to Alberta; they'll fit right in. They'll slide right in. We have pierogi parties at church; it'll be fine. But I just wish that Justin Trudeau expressed that same compassion and leniency to the people he is tasked with taking care of first.
No, it's amazing. I guess it's a culture of illegality that continues. You're crossing into the country in an illegal fashion, so why obey any rules? I mean, you know, you've already stated your intention of not legally immigrating to Canada, and meanwhile, law-abiding Canadian taxpayers, we can't get onto an airplane without being vaxxed and without wearing the face diaper. Thank you so much, Justin Trudeau. And little Omar.
Yeah. Kane Enmark gives us a buck. Just love you two. Best power couple.
Wow. A power couple.
Like Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth. Yep.
Well, hopefully it doesn't devolve into Johnny Depp and Amber Heard.
I just can't get enough of that whole trial. But as I know. But as I watch it, I'm like, how did they think this would end up any other way? He left his wife and kids for her, or not wife, but you should have gotten married there. Left for her. The whole thing is drug fueled. How did we think this was going to turn out? Not well, right? Anyway, it still makes for entertaining TV.
Incredible.
And Becca Henderson gives us a buck. I'll be part of the David fan club, she says, with sympathy for David. David does a great job. Yes, he does, and is a valuable member of the Rebel News team. Yes, he is. Same with you, Sheila. You know what? At the Student Journalism Conference, the young people there, they don't really care if they got a picture with me or Ezra, but they're like, Sheila, can you hold my camera so I can get a picture with David? Like, they loved you.
I'm quitting while I'm ahead. That's all I'm saying.
They loved you. They did.
Well, thank you for those kind words, Becca.
And Kierdorf gives us $5. Thanks for everything, Rebel News. I think that's the same one, unless you sent that to us twice. If you did, well, thank you again. I think we're all caught up. It's almost 10 minutes past the hour. Don't send me letters. I tease David because he's the greatest and he can take a joke. I'm his biggest fan here at the company, I think.
Well, you're so kind, Sheila. Well, listen, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. A special thank you to all those who gave us do-re-mi. It's how we keep the lights on. We don't do the direct withdrawal of your bank account like the CBC and so many others in Main Street Media. And thank you to Olivia behind the board. I want you all to have a great weekend. There'll be two other Rebels here. It's going to be Sheila and Adam Seuss, I believe, on Monday. Have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy the sun if you got it in your province. And in the meantime, as always, folks, stay sane.
how do you feel about education? I think it's critical. It's very important.
Yeah.
How do you feel about indoctrination by people that are educators? I don't like that at all. There's just two very different things.
Right.
And if you want to tell me that they're the same thing, I say fuck you.
Right.
Because they're not. Because there's a lot of fucking crazy people that wind up being teachers. Someone said to me that, or read this, not all, that term groomer, a lot of people don't like that term online. They're very upset.
Yeah.
But they're real.
Right.
There are groomers. You don't like it? Do you not like it because you don't want children to be groomed? Or do you not like it because it's a pejorative that's used against the left? Which is, I think, more likely.
Yeah.
Well, here's what's more important. Not have people groom your fucking kids. That's what's more important than you getting uncomfortable with this word because it's used by people on the right. Like I saw someone as an argument, someone who I think is an intelligent person, say that there should be a block against using the word groomer.
Unbelievable.
No.